Some villains crave money and power. Others are on a quest for revenge, dead set on a specific target. But Mr. Crocker? He just wanted the truth, and it completely destroyed him. To most people that watched The Fairly Oddparents, Denzel Crocker was seen as an unhinged lunatic. A demented schoolteacher with an ear on his neck and conspiracy theories frantically carved on the walls of his brain. He was a joke, a punchline. But the truth? It's darker than anyone remembers. He wasn't always like this. There was a time when he was happy. A time when he was loved and was just trying to live his best life. But that was before the fairies took everything away from him. The truth is, the story here goes so much deeper than just one episode that explained his origin story. When you piece together the multiple key episodes that give us further context on Mr. Crocker as a character, we begin to see a pattern and the weaving of a web of lies amid a game that was rigged against him from the start. When we give our attention to the full story, not just the surface level info, we would take in the story of a man who saw something that he was not supposed to see, and paid the price for it. A man who, as messed up as it sounds, was never wrong about the magic around him. On the contrary, he was just punished for being right. And most of all, a man who would become a tool, used by the very beings who destroyed him. And that's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna deep dive into the life of Mr. Crocker, uncovering the dark truth behind who he is as a person and how he never even had a choice in any of this to begin with. Before we get into it, thank you for clicking on this video. I genuinely appreciate your time, and I can't thank you enough for being a part of my YouTube journey. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Sean, and I deeply analyze cartoons. I love a good nostalgic walk down memory lane, and I'm very passionate about turning over as many stones as I can in my deep dives. I have been running every single aspect of this channel by myself for almost 5 years now, and I absolutely love what I do. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing, dropping a like, and leaving a comment letting me know what you think of the video. If you want to show some extra support, Patreon or YouTube memberships are an excellent way to do that. I have multiple other creative outlets that I've been cooking up in the background, and your guys' support goes a really long way in making those creative dreams a reality. Again, I can't thank you enough for your time, and let's get right into it. Now, every descent into madness has a beginning. And for Mr. Crocker, that beginning, as we experienced it, wasn't a tragic flashback or a broken home. Not yet, at least. It was something that's far more dark. Normalcy. Or at least Mr. Crocker's version of it. Not only was this episode we're about to dive into our introduction to his character, but it was also our first look into a mind that had already cracked long ago, broken by the burden of carrying a truth that no one else could see. In all reality, he wasn't just a man obsessed with fairies. This was a man at war with a reality that kept gaslighting him over and over again. And the world, it just mocked him, labeling him as crazy. When you look closely though, if you truly listen, what you'll find isn't just madness. It's complete and utter desperation. It's deep trauma dressed up as comedy. This right here is the earliest version of a man that would someday enslave the planet to show them that he was right all along. Before the origin story, before the breakdown, before the fairies powered an entire dimension off of his pain, this was where it all began. The Season 1 episode, Transparents. As this episode starts out, we see show and tell underway in Mr. Crocker's class, as Francis, the class bully, shows off his pet dog, Mange, who eats first graders.
They keep his pelt shiny.
Timmy starts voicing his nerves to his fairies over the fact that they suggested that he wish for an extinct Polywallyoptosaurus to bring in for show and tell, but they do their best to talk him down.
Thank you, Francis. That was riveting. Can you guess what letter dog starts with?
D?
Right, congratulations. Timmy Turner, would you care to come up and bore us with whatever you dragged into school today?
Timmy starts to excitedly show the class his dinosaur that Cosmo and Wanda brought back from extinction, and without paying much mind to it, Mr. Crocker immediately gives him a D because that's what dinosaur starts with. However, when Timmy's friends in class question the fact that he's got an actual dinosaur, he starts to show it off further, pointing out its real jaws, tail, and belly.
Dinosaur? Extraordinary. No normal child could have access to that type of genetic technology. There's only one logical explanation. Fairy godparents! That's all right, Mr. Turner. No harm done. I would, however, like to have a word with your fairy parents. Plain, ordinary, everyday, don't have magical powers parents. First thing tomorrow.
Later that night, we see Timmy on the phone with Chester and AJ, begging them to help track down the dinosaur, saying that it was actually his uncle's dog in a dinosaur costume. Without much question, they both agree to help, and immediately after that, we see Cosmo and Wanda apologizing to Timmy for causing all of this mess to begin with.
Come on, hit me and make a mess out of me. That'll make you feel better.
I'm gonna need a bat.
Yeah?
Oh, I can't believe this. How am I gonna explain to my parents that I brought a dinosaur to school?
Well, I don't know, but knocking the candy out of me isn't gonna solve anything.
Just then, Wanda suggests the brilliant idea of her and Cosmo posing as Timmy's parents so that they can talk to Mr. Crocker for him, which of course Timmy sees as an excellent idea, blissfully unaware that Mr. Crocker is onto the fact that he has fairy godparents. He wishes that they could pose as his parents, and just like that, we see the two of them getting taller, growing normal proportions, and losing their wings and crowns. Unfortunately, though, looking the part is just half the battle, as their mannerisms are very far from that of a normal human. At that, Timmy gets the bat again, as he begins to put them through his school of basic human training.
If you're gonna be my human parents, you're gonna have to act as human as possible.
Okay. What's next?
This! No, Wanda, no magic! Humans can't do magic!
Oh, what about those guys with the white tigers, huh? In Las Vegas, they have those sequin shirts and they can do magic and because they always have...
Breathe, bird brain! You have lungs now! You have to breathe!
Timmy ends up taking them out to work on other things, and even something as simple as having to go through the door instead of phasing through walls has them stopped up and falling to the ground. Eventually, we see Wanda driving them towards the school, just having a blast as Timmy sits in the back seat, fearing for his life. Behind the car, we see that Wanda has left nothing but wreckage and destruction in her wake.
Even though you haven't nailed down being human yet, there's no reason for them to suspect you're...
Fairy godparents! After all the years of searching, I've finally found proof of the existence of fairy godparents!
Mr. Crocker then sneaks underneath his desk and closes a little curtain that he has set up so that he can have some privacy down there. He sits in secrecy, talking about how everyone around him, from his school days all the way up to his job, has always called him nuts for his conspiracy theories about fairies. Even his own boss knowingly mocks him to his face, laughing at another teacher roasting him and even calling him crackpot while he stands nearby. He says that's all going to change though when he proves his theory to be correct. We then cut over to a phone booth in the janitor's closet, which Crocker has deemed the Crocker Cave, where he explains his plan in further detail.
After I capture Timmy's fairies and harness their magical powers for my own use, darn it! I'll get not only the proper equipment, but also the respect and admiration that have so long eluded me. Mine will be a new world order, with I, Mr. Crocker, as the supreme magical ruler.
Sorry about all the jokes about you.
Then, only then. Where is that coming from?
Mr. Crocker then begins his search with his fairy finder device, which accurately shows him a close-up of Timmy and his fairies arriving at school.
Where should I park? Principal, teachers. Ooh, fairies! Park there! Park in the fairy space!
If they park in the fairy space, it'll be all the proof the world will need.
Okay!
No, it's a trap! Oh, that was close.
No, that was so close.
Back in the school, Mr. Crocker catches Chester and AJ searching for Timmy's show and tell project. He ends up telling them about his meeting with Timmy's parents this morning and saying that if they do find it, they need to bring it to him so that he can give it to them. Chester is unsure about this agreement, but when Mr. Crocker promises him a seat on the throne in his new world order, Chester shakes his hand and agrees to it happily. Not long after, Timmy and his godparents show up for the meeting with Mr. Crocker, and they immediately struggle to play it cool.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
How's that for a human hello? You're Kung Social.
Sorry, Mr. Crocker. Mom's,
A fairy?
No, I was gonna say enthusiastic about meeting an educator of your status.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
From there, Mr. Crocker says that he just has to get them into his special electric fairy detector chair to test if they're actually fairies.
If they survive, they're fairies! If they don't, I have tenure! May I offer you a chair?
Certainly. May I offer you a fish? Ooh, neat! Fish sticks! I'm starved!
I'll be right back after I chip off the dead skin.
As Mr. Crocker recovers from his near execution, we cut over to Chester and AJ, who are still in their pursuit of the dinosaur that Timmy brought to school the day prior. Unfortunately for them, though, it runs into the girls' bathroom, leaving them perplexed as how to proceed, as they're both very unwilling to go inside.
You go in.
No, you go in.
Look, let's both go in and get out before any girls show up.
Good plan!
Sucker.
As that's happening, we see Mr. Crocker serving Cosmo and Wanda their first ever cups of coffee. Naturally, it doesn't take long before the two are bouncing off the walls and completely losing their minds. However, their fun comes to a grinding halt when, all of a sudden, Wanda needs to go to the bathroom thanks to the coffee. Mr. Crocker walks her to the bathrooms where we see his next scheme unfurl.
There you go.
Boys, girls, mystical creatures. Well,
Mom?
Oh, good morning, Timmy.
Uh-oh, it's the principal.
of course, principals first.
New World Order! New World Order!
Maybe I'm naive, but I don't think she's doing it right.
Just then, Chester and AJ run through the door carrying the box with the dinosaur inside. Yet again, Crocker tries to persuade Chester with his new world order. However, he decides to stay loyal to Timmy as he throws him the box. Sadly, though, it doesn't really do much, as Crocker just kind of rips it away from Timmy's hands immediately, claiming it as his own.
In all the years of fairies don't exist. With this, I, Mr. Crocker, will prove once and for all that these two creatures are Timmy Turner's fairy godparents!
Later on, we see Timmy in his classroom as the principal walks in, giving them all detention. Timmy for faking his show and tell, Chester and AJ for going into the girls' bathroom, and Crocker for encasing her in a toilet paper cocoon and promising two young boys world domination.
You may have outsmarted me this time, Turner, but I'm on to you. They can't keep me in detention forever!
Or maybe they can.
Coffee can. Let's get coffee. What's coffee?
This episode is one that reminds me of why I just love the early seasons of this show so much. This one, Superbike, the episode where they go into VR, they're all just such classics, and on one hand, I love them, but on the other hand, they're a tough reminder of how the show just strayed from the path so obscenely. Comparing this episode to even some of the episodes that we're going to check out later on in this video, it really has me appreciating the clever humor that they leaned into so heavily early on. As far as this one goes though, it's definitely full of iconic moments, and it's the perfect one to begin our story. This episode showed us nearly everything that we need to know about Mr. Crocker as a character to digest his role in the rest of this story. One of the biggest things that I love about this one is that being the first Mr. Crocker appearance, this would be one of the very first time that we see him have one of his classic fairy godparents moments.
Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Ouch! The fairies' face! They're fairies! Fairy godparents!
This is just so iconic in and of itself. If there's anything that people who grew up watching this show correlate with his character, it would be these moments where he just explosively shouts about fairy godparents. It's wild to consider that at face value, this is just supposed to be an amped up conspiracy theorist of a character, but all in all, he would end up playing a much more gigantic role in everything. In this episode though, we would see a very solid introduction to the fact that outside of his obsession, he has a massive distaste for his career as well as the kids that he teaches. This man is the kind of teacher that has a kid in his class who blatantly carries a jar of first graders to feed to his dog, and he doesn't even bat an eye or think to do anything about it. He doesn't even seem to remotely care. On top of that, he's an absolute garbage educator. He's just kind of grading these kids based off of the letter of the thing that they brought in for show and tell without even a single thought into what they're presenting on or how they're presenting it. By that logic, you could just bring an apple to school and score an easy A. The amount of blatant disregard towards his students and complete lack of care towards his job is absolutely remarkable. On the other hand though, this one also showed us how all of the students in Mr. Crocker's class feel about him. That's summed up pretty well when Mr. Crocker is popping off about fairy godparents and Chester and AJ are nearby laughing at him with a cuckoo clock. That bit would, of course, persist through the entire rest of the episode as they would continue to mock him, but essentially, this episode served in a way for the writers to tell us that his coworkers aren't the only ones who think that he's delusional. That, of course, extends to the students that he teaches as well. Which, well, that in and of itself is problematic because how can you want to learn from someone that you think doesn't have accurate information to provide? Aside from that though, another interesting thing to take note of early on is how Mr. Crocker's mannerisms are going to change over time. In this episode, we see him hurting himself multiple times, and it almost seems like he was unwillingly smacking himself a couple times. Like he couldn't control it or hold it in. It's interesting to see how this would change going forward many seasons later. Even more mind-blowing than that, though, is how intense it is to take on that this one also laid the foundation of the fact that though Mr. Crocker is seen as a crazy conspiracy theorist by nearly every single person around him, he's right. Like, down to the last detail, he is right. The only thing separating him from showcasing his truth, however, is a series of unfortunate miscalculations and random mishaps that are out of his control. He almost plays a Wile E. Coyote-esque role in this show, always chasing after the Roadrunner, or in this case, the fairies. And like, he knows what's up, but there's always one small thing that leads to a wild outcome that you likely didn't see coming. Unlike Wile E. Coyote though, and how all of his inventions from Acme seem to blow up in his face, Mr. Crocker, on the other hand, seems to have some tools in his arsenal that work pretty accurately. I mean, this guy invented a fairy finder that honed in directly on Cosmo and Wanda. You gotta admit, that is pretty impressive. More than anything, this episode showed us that Mr. Crocker knows what he's doing. He knows that fairies exist. He knows how to track them. However, despite all of that, due to lack of proof, his accuracy has just garnished him a reputation as a crackpot. Now, kind of a side tangent, but it is related. Anyone else find it odd that Timmy seems to be the only kid at school with fairies? When Crocker pulled out his fairy finder, it honed in directly on Cosmo and Wanda. Which makes sense, considering this is early in the morning before school and they are probably the only fairies in the neighborhood. But it just kinda had me thinking. It's so weird that in this whole school, and for the most part the whole city, Timmy is the only consistent character with fairies. Sure, you have your Remy Bucksaplenties who show up for one-off episodes, but as far as regular characters go, it's weird to consider that there aren't more fairies around, considering A, how many kids other than Timmy have crummy lives and would be deserving of them, but also B, just how many fairies there are in Fairy World. I don't remember which specific episode it was where we got our first look at Fairy World, but you and I both know good and well that we've seen hundreds of thousands, if not millions of fairies pouring out of there. I mean, there's even an entire alternate world called Anti-Fairy World with opposite versions of every single fairy in existence. Just let that one sink in. For every single one of these hundreds of thousands, there is an evil counterpart immediately doubling those numbers. There are an obscene amount of these magical creatures around. Yet Crocker has only ever really gone after Cosmo and Wanda, as they're seemingly the only fairies that he's been able to track with his high-tech equipment. I mean, statistically speaking, with that number of fairies potentially roaming between Fairy World and the Earth, Mr. Crocker certainly would have more fairies around him constantly than just Cosmo and Wanda. Which, that right there, does make me curious. Maybe if he shifted his aim to other fairies, would he have better luck? I mean, there are millions of them after all. On a completely different note though, I can't help but find myself asking in hindsight, what does it say about Mr. Crocker that he survived the electric fairy detector chair? He'd said it himself. If you survive, you're a fairy. And if you don't, well, that would mean that you were human. However, he survived it. And I mean, this can't really even be chalked up to faulty design or user error. Water plus electricity equals death, plain and simple. This thing was blatantly designed to kill someone instantly. And Mr. Crocker survived it. Now, clear as day, this can be chalked up to cartoon logic and the fact that this show plays it fast and loose with the physical consequences of actions. Obviously, it's supposed to be a gag, but again, if we're willing to dig deeper into it and weave this bit of context into a few different future episodes that we're about to dive into, it tells a much deeper and darker story. He sat in this device designed to kill humans and expose fairies. And the fact that he survived isn't because he's a fairy or because he has a magical ability, but let's just say it certainly could be due to the fact that he's meant to play a role in something much bigger, or that just maybe he's being manipulated by an outside force that he's completely unaware of. If there's anything else that we need to touch on before we head into the next episode, it would be the fact that Mr. Crocker did all of this and the principal knew about his plans but didn't tell anyone. In the end, we see her giving him detention, saying that it was for trapping her and promising these kids world domination. She knew what he had planned. And what did she do? Give him detention. Like that makes any difference. I mean, this info is definitely something that she should probably do a little more with than just giving him a simple timeout. But she's too busy talking bad about him to even do her job in the first place, so what do you expect? All of the adults in this show are trash anyways, so there isn't really much surprise that the principal enables this rather concerning behavior from one of her teachers. One other random thing though that I just can't help but question is the part where Wanda ends up driving Timmy and Cosmo to school and just causing absolute chaos along the way. I mean, she completely destroyed the whole town in the name of Timmy trying to make them seem as human as possible. But I mean, couldn't he have just wished them to school instead of going through all of this mass destruction? Like, if he really wanted to commit to the bit, he could have just wished that they were down the road from the school and just kind of had her drive down the street and into the parking lot. Or, I don't know, just wish that Wanda knew how to drive safely. It doesn't really make all too much sense, considering that Timmy wishes them places all the time and no one really bats an eye. You'd think that the focus would be just keeping this charade up directly around Mr. Crocker to make things as easy as possible on them. On that note, I guess he could have just wished that they were good at acting human. But, that would have killed the momentum built, and it wouldn't have allowed for as much character development as we were able to get here. But nevertheless, moving along with that initial context in mind, the next episode that we're going to dive into is one that really answered just so many questions for us. When this episode came out, it changed absolutely everything about the Fairly Oddparents as a show. Seriously, things were never the same after this one. We're looking at none other than the secret origin of Denzel Crocker. As this episode starts out, we see Chester and AJ on the teeter-totter together before school. As everyone is having fun, Timmy comes running up out of nowhere, warning them that they need to run and hide because it's March 15th. Everyone erupts into a panic and kids begin to hide and get as far away as they can.
What's up with March 15th? Is it Be Kind to Squirrels Day?
No! Every kid knows that March 15th is the day that Mr. Crocker is at his meanest! And according to my genetic tracking device, he's getting closer! Everyone! Run to the safe bosom of the United States educational system!
I'm not moving until I get my nuts! Or until I can feel my legs!
Inside of the classroom, everyone panics as they await Crocker's awful treatment. He forces them to put their heads down using a magnet on Chester's braces, and he makes AJ's brain backfire by asking him philosophical, thought-provoking questions that cause deep introspection rather than being easily answered. While they're struggling, Crocker then sets his sights on Timmy, deciding to put him on a stool with a dunce cap, surrounded by angry rabid dogs that are chained up merely inches away from being able to attack him.
Why are you punishing us like this?
Why? Let me answer your question with a few of my own. Why am I still a miserable school teacher? Or why doesn't my tracking device ever find me a fairy godparent?
Well, you used an egg beater instead of a DNA sampler, and...
Silence! What is the sound of one hand clapping?
I can't answer that either!
Why don't any of the things I wish for ever become reality?
Timmy says that he's fed up with this happening every year, so he's gonna get to the bottom of it once and for all. He sicks the dogs on Cosmo and Wanda, who are still disguised as squirrels nearby, and with the coast clear, he heads to Crocker's house, which is just an absolute rundown dump with a yellow Fallout New Vegas filter over it. Timmy walks up to the house, following AJ's Crocker tracker, right as Mr. Crocker pulls up in his creeper van. They poof into birds so that they can get a better look, as Mr. Crocker kicks his front door open, complaining about his life.
Stupid two-bit room, stupid two-bit van, stupid two-bit life.
Denzel, would you like some stupid two-bit dessert? I made your stupid two-bit favorite.
Happy March 15th. Mother, what's the matter with you?
I was only trying to cheer you up. What happened to the perky little ball of sunshine that used to be my son?
That child doesn't exist. I can't even remember a time when I was happy.
Mr. Crocker smacks the cake out of his mother's hands, causing it to go flying right into his face while Timmy watches nearby, troubled by the sight. He's shaken by the fact that Mr. Crocker is so miserable, yet his mother says he wasn't always like this. He pitches to Cosmo and Wanda the idea of going back in time to stop the bad thing that happened to Mr. Crocker, but when they point out that he'd be helping his worst enemy, he doesn't really think much of it, saying that if all goes according to plan, Mr. Crocker won't be his worst enemy anymore. And just like that, Timmy hops on his magical time scooter with the Crocker tracker in hand as he heads 10 years into the past to the 90s.
Wow, my house 10 years ago!
And look, it's your parents, and you're still in your mommy's tummy. I thought she loved Timmy. Why did she eat him?
Honey, this house is finally ours!
It's the perfect home for a young couple who can't wait for the birth of their new daughter.
Yeah! And look at all this cool daughter stuff I bought. I'd be crushed if we had a son!
Not long after that, though, Timmy is nearly demolished by the same exact black van that Crocker still drives to this day. Inside, a young adult Denzel speeds down the road, headed to his first day on the job as a teacher, excitedly hoping to capture a fairy godparent from one of the many students at the school. As he has his usual fairy godparents outburst while driving, though, he ends up rear-ending Principal Wexelplex at full speed, causing him to go flying through the windshield.
What have you done?
Approximately $1,800 worth of damage. But fear not, Geraldine. I can fix it.
I'm your boss now. Call me Miss Waxelplax. And how do you propose to fix my car?
Once I capture a fairy godparent, I'll wish your car back to normal. Fairies!
Timmy hides nearby, surprised that even an entire decade ago, Mr. Crocker was absolutely bonkers about fairy godparents. At that, he decides that they need to go back even further. They take it back another decade to the 80s, where Timmy finds himself outside of Dimsdale University. He has Cosmo and Wanda poof him up an outfit to help him not stick out so much, and not long after that, we see Mr. Crocker nearby.
Denzel, the whole university is abuzz with big news.
Ah, Geraldine. I'm glad you're here to see this. After spending 4 years in college on my research, I'm finally ready to share my discovery with the world.
Inside, we see all sorts of scientists and government agents who are anxiously sitting in the crowd looking for a new project to throw some funding at. Mr. Crocker takes the stage and immediately has their attention as he talks to them about the concept of anything you could ever want just magically appearing before you.
How is this possible, you might ask? Why, with the help of Fairy Godparents! Through many years of research, I have very nearly discovered actual proof that fairy godparents float among us! These fairies are assigned to a child and grant their every wish. I say we place painful monitor collars on every child in America so we can capture their fairies so that we control the magic.
Everybody in the audience laughs their heads off at him as he expects funding for this project. The government officials and scientists in particular are disappointed because they were promised a huge scientific breakthrough. As Mr. Crocker sits on the stage being mocked, he cries in a panic, talking about how this is the second worst day of his life. This has Timmy realizing that the memory he's looking for is actually one that stems back from Crocker's childhood. Just like that, they hop back on the time scooter and head back to Dimsdale in 1972, in hopes of finding an adolescent Mr. Crocker. Just like they did in the 80s, Cosmo and Wanda poof up a disguise for Timmy, and the hunt begins.
Now all we gotta do is find the miserable little kid that'll grow up to be the miserable Denzel Crocker.
Oh, I know where he is.
Hey, it's my school in the 70s. And there's Crocker. You were right, Cosmo. You were right.
Wanda says that she feels like there's something vaguely familiar about young Crocker, but she just can't quite put her wand on it. Nearby, though, a young Timmy's dad accidentally skateboards into the street, nearly getting hit by a semi-truck. Right at the last moment, though, young Mr. Crocker speeds by in a go-kart, grabbing Timmy's dad and saving him from certain doom.
Ooh, Denzel Crocker. He's groovy and so heroic.
Hello, Dimsdale. I'm Nanette Ubetcha, reporting live from Dimsdale Elementary with 10-year-old Denzel Crocker, where he just saved the life of yet another lucky citizen of Dimsdale.
It's all in a day's work, ma'am.
Wait, I'm learning that the mayor is declaring tomorrow, March 15th, Denzel Crocker Day.
I can't wait to tell my mom.
Back at Mr. Crocker's house, which in the 70s was well maintained and pretty nice, he runs up excited to tell his mom about what happened today. However, she doesn't even really have the time to listen to him, saying that she's got to get to her second job. Paying him little mind, she pats him on the head and walks off to work. Behind her, however, left in charge of watching him, is none other than Denzel's evil babysitter, Vic, who just so happens to look mysteriously close to Timmy's babysitter, Vicky. Vic grabs Denzel by the throat and tosses him into his room, where he's greeted by his green and pink parrots.
Wait a minute. 10-year-old kid, inattentive parent, evil babysitter, pink and green parrots and soapbox cars? Oh my gosh! Denzel Crocker must have parrots! If I ever do that again, hit me. Not now!
Gah! My life is so miserable. I don't know how I'd be able to bear it if it weren't for you two. Cosmo and Wanda!
Timmy pulls his fairies aside as he's completely feeling betrayed by the fact that 30 years ago they were Mr. Crocker's fairies. However, they're just as shocked as he is because neither of them can remember being his fairies at any point. The only thing that Wanda seems to be able to remember is that March 15th, 1972 is the worst day in history, but she can't really seem to recall why. Timmy begins connecting dots, however. He starts to get a hunch that Crocker must have done something to expose his secret and get his fairies taken away forever.
Oh, Timmy, that's ridiculous! All fairies are masters of disguise!
Yeah, I know I'd never do anything to give myself away. Hi, Ice Cream Man! Hi, group of children! Hi, Birdie! I can fly too, because I'm a fairy! Whee!
Get in here, you idiot!
I wonder who blew his secret.
We see the day of March 15th arrive as Timmy slept overnight in a tent outside, and in the morning, Mr. Crocker's mother leaves for work. He asks if she's going to be able to make it to the Denzel Crocker Day ceremony today. However, she says that she'll be too busy cleaning the lockers at the roller disco. As he walks away in tears, Timmy follows him to City Hall, where we see a massive parade gathered to celebrate Denzel Crocker, who's being hailed as the most selfless and helpful kid in Dimsdale. He takes the stage to give a speech, and right at that moment, Timmy arrives with his fairies. Just then, it all comes back to Wanda. She says that this is the moment where it happens, right here in front of all of these people. Timmy instructs her to kill the power, as he says that he's gonna go get Mr. Crocker off of the stage. The two tell Cosmo not to do anything stupid as they step into action.
When I was 4, oh, how I wanted a pony.
Pony? Who wants a pony when you can have everything you want because I'm... Hey, is this thing on?
With the power off, Timmy finally has a moment to talk to Mr. Crocker. He tries to tell him that he's in danger and that he's about to ruin his life, but sadly for him, it all comes crashing down when Cosmo is randomly poofed next to the power switch and he flips it back on in an act of stupidity.
If you're not careful, this will be the day when everybody realizes that you have fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents!
A fairy? That's absurd! If I was a fairy, I'd look like this!
This guy is true. He's got a fairy. I don't believe it. A fairy.
No! Do you realize what you've done? Do you?
Right at that moment, the sky turns pink and a massive funnel cloud falls from above. We hear the booming voice of Jorgen von Strangle as a giant version of the rule book comes crashing before young Denzel Crocker. At that moment, Timmy wishes that he was hidden, and as Mr. Crocker witnesses it, he realizes that Timmy has fairies too. With him gone now though, only Crocker is left to deal with the aftermath of all of this. The fairy men in black repel from above as they're joined by a young Jorgen von Strangle, and the bunch use their mind wipers to make everyone in town forget all of the magic that they witnessed today, as well as every good thing that Denzel had ever done for them using his fairy's magic.
What's this thing do?
Who are you?
What's this thing do?
Who's that kid?
Hey, if this thing can track my genetics...
Ow! Who did that?
then I can use this to track anything, even my fairy! Fairy godparents exist.
Just like that, Jorgen grabs Cosmo and uses the mind wiper on young Denzel Crocker, hitting him with it over and over again, causing him to lose his sanity further each time. Having clearly received more mind wiping than a human is supposed to, Mr. Crocker grows a hunch on his back. His teeth grow and begin to rot, and his long hair is singed short, leaving him looking shaken. Like it's nothing to him, Jorgen flies back to Fairy World with the rest of the cleanup crew, and Denzel is left in the wake of a life that was completely ripped away from him in an instant. The group of people, of course, have no recollection as to why they're there, but when they see all of the Denzel Crocker signs, they come to the conclusion that they must be an angry mob and that they need to chase him down. As he runs away in fear, we see Timmy feeling awful about having ruined Mr. Crocker's life.
At least now you know why he's miserable.
That's not good enough. Come on. We should go back to March 14th and stop this from happening.
Up. Absolutely not. Your meddling in this era is finished. After speaking with my funky 70s counterpart, we have decided that you are forbidden from ever returning to March of 1972. However, you may feel free to muck around with every other month of this year.
The two Jorgens banish Timmy back to his normal time as the two of them have a disco dance-off together. Not too far away, though, we see young Denzel Crocker finally escaping the angry mob.
What's this? Something's going on here, but I don't know what. Fairy godparents exist. Fairies do exist. Fairies!
As Timmy reflects on the years past through his photo album, Cosmo tries his best to look on the bright side, pointing out that Timmy at least gave him a nice lifelong hobby. Right at that moment, though, Timmy hears a familiar beeping sound coming from outside.
This device says there are fairies about. Where are you?
Oh no! The tracker! I left it in the past and he has it now!
Fairy godparents! I know fairies exist, and someday I'm gonna catch one. They can't hide from me forever.
Blah, 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 blah.
Now, this episode, you guys, was one of the biggest driving forces behind this video. This episode, in and of itself, is so incredibly heavy, and it comes with so many harsh realities. But what I didn't realize until looking at it in hindsight is how much this episode is just a small piece of a bigger puzzle. Upon watching this one as a kid, it felt like this was the end cap to Crocker's story in a way. Like, this was our explanation as to why he is how he is, and from now on, when you see him doing his general Crockerisms, you'll know why. However, when we put it into context of the other episodes that would occur after this one, it really makes you consider things differently in the long run. With that being said though, the glaring error of this show is how the only way to put together a congruent story with theories that make sense is to cherry pick episodes that don't completely abolish any previously established continuity. For example, this moment in time would actually be revisited in a future episode. That would be the Season 9 episode, Let Sleeper Dogs Lie. It would air more than a decade after the episode that we just checked out, and it'd see Mr. Crocker watching old home movies when he comes across one from his 11th birthday where he sees that Cosmo and Wanda are his fairies, and Jorgen von Strangle shows up telling him that now they're being taken away because he's growing up and can deal with his problems in therapy. As Jorgen leaves with Cosmo and Wanda, Crocker is left with his dog, Sparky. The magic dog that they threw into this show instead of just letting it finally rest in peace. This dog ends up somehow being Timmy's at some point, and I don't know, man. I have a tough time considering any of this to be part of the original story that was told because it just undid so much important and really solid context that they had already established. We all saw how Crocker actually lost his fairies. And, I mean, sure, you could argue that Timmy has lost and regained his fairies multiple times, so maybe Crocker did too? But honestly, even if that were the case, that doesn't land anywhere near as solid as the original ending to his time with Cosmo and Wanda that we had witnessed over a decade prior. On top of that, it was clear at this point they were just trying to turn this show into a cash cow that it was just never going to be. I mean, in the early 2000s, the show was pretty entertaining and it had a lot of potential, but it didn't really age with the times very well. They shoehorned in a baby and a dog. They shoehorned in a neighbor girl for Timmy to share his fairies with. They shoehorned in Drake Bell. And it all failed to maintain any sense of relevance that they may have once had. For me personally, it was about the point that they introduced Poof that I kind of mentally decided that the story was over. It was like when the Wild Thornberrys added in that Shane dude in season 5, and we were all just supposed to accept that there's a new main character all these years later. I don't know what it is, but I feel like when a show with an established cast all of a sudden throws in another character and tries to force it on us as viewers, it just kind of feels, I don't know the word, hollow, phoned in? Like they ran out of ideas, so they decided to add in another main character to try to open doors for new plot lines. Inevitably though, it almost seems like when a show does that, it starts stepping on its own toes and undoing major plot points that were very well received at the time that they were introduced. This episode right here, and the way that they revisit it in the future, is an excellent example of that. They added this dog into the show and decided to go back and make it so Crocker used to own the dog as well, and as a result, they took their initial plot out back and laid it to rest, leaving us all wondering how Crocker could possibly still have Cosmo and Wanda after March 15th, 1972. With all of that being said, I disavow that episode, and we're just going to pretend like none of that dog stuff happened in the name of cherry-picking episodes that actually make sense in the grand scheme of things. Now, another thing that's really compelling in this episode is the way that we saw Mr. Crocker's character change so much just over the course of 2 years. I mean, in the first episode we checked out, Mr. Crocker seemingly had functional equipment, just kind of lacking the funding for space. He was hiding under his desk and having his little meetings inside of his phone booth. Yet here we are 2 seasons later, and now this man can't even create a proper fairy tracker. A device that we've seen him previously create and use in earlier episodes. Obviously, over time, they took some steps to flesh out his character more and the story arc that they wanted to pursue for him. However, it does seem kind of odd that they dumbed down his character so much, taking away his ability to create proper fairy hunting equipment. At first, it almost seems like, again, another one of those instances where the show is inadvertently sticking its nose into previously explored territory and completely undoing everything that it once tried to tell us. However, again, just stick with me here, because this is also a massive integral part of the bigger point being built. What if, much like in the last episode where Mr. Crocker mysteriously survived that electric chair, there could have been outside forces at play that caused his character to change? In Transparents, we saw Mr. Crocker having built a very accurate fairy finder. What if the fairies knew that he was flying too close to the sun, though? What if the higher powers of Fairy World felt like he was getting too close to exposing the truth, so they magically altered him as a person, in a way that would make him seem crazier than ever in his pursuit of fairies, but also diminish his ability to actually track them in an accurate way? It has to be acknowledged that this change in character could have purely been a creative choice on the writer's part. However, if we consider just why the fairies would have wanted to do something like that, on all levels, it makes his position as a character seem so much more dark and morbid. The next episode we're about to check out really is the icing on the cake as far as that's concerned. It's kind of the biggest piece of the puzzle that truly explains just why the fairies could have made him who he is today. Before we get into the next one though, we have to dive further into just how heartbreaking it is that Mr. Crocker, who was once a pinnacle of public perception in his youth, now can't even remember a time when he was happy. Like, his poor mother has all of these memories of her son being a happy flower child. Sure, she wasn't really around for much of it, but she definitely remembers the date that everything shifted dramatically, whether she understands why it happened or not. Mr. Crocker, though, because of what happened to him at the hands of Jorgen von Strangle and his mind wiper, repeatedly blasting him with it until he was a shell of his former self, all he can recall is being miserable as far back as he can remember. Seeing this now, it just hits so much harder. When I was a kid, I didn't like Mr. Crocker because he was always the bad guy, so of course, by default, I didn't really put much thought into what happened to him. Looking at it now, though, it's just so sad. I mean, his secret getting revealed and his fairies being taken away was completely inevitable. There wasn't a single thing that little Denzel Crocker could have done on that day to stop this from happening. Like, we all saw that if Timmy hadn't shown up and done what he did, Cosmo still would have revealed his secret to everybody. Even before Timmy went back and messed with it, March 15th, 1972 was still a terrible day in Mr. Crocker's life. In all reality, Timmy had nothing but good intentions and was just trying to stop this day from becoming infamous. Speaking of Timmy, though, it's pretty insane to take in the fact that Mr. Crocker's obsession with fairies stems back decades upon decades before Timmy was even born. Like, given the context of the entire show, that's pretty mind-boggling. Mr. Crocker has been searching for fairies for years upon years upon years. But now, all of a sudden, some random kid comes along who gives him even just a hint of proof. And, oh, icing on the cake, that kid just so happens to have the same exact fairies that Mr. Crocker had ripped away from him. Honestly, the odds are just impeccable, and it really does make me wonder if things were always supposed to go the way that they did. Did they originally plan to have the story end with some sort of time loop where Timmy gets his fairies taken away and takes on a Crocker-esque role, tormenting the next kid who ends up with Cosmo and Wanda? Likely not, but I mean, the way that they make both Timmy's and Mr. Crocker's lives so deeply intertwined and almost kind of mirror each other in a way, makes me wonder if that had ever been on the table at some point. On a kind of similar note, wondering how much planning that they put into all of this, I can't help but wonder if the tracker that we saw Crocker having at the end of this episode could have been the same one that we saw him using in Transparents. Of course, it's a stretch, and that would have taken some serious timeline gymnastics, but I mean, if they could have found a way to make this full circle where it kind of sets us up for the events of Transparents retroactively, that would have been pretty sick, actually. With all of that being said, though, the events of this episode are really intriguing to take in because at first glance, we all thought that this was ultimately just a sheer coincidence brought on by Cosmo being an idiot. However, Cosmo's actions in this one, as idiotic as they were, again have me wondering if there's a higher power at play here. Sure, maybe Cosmo's just stupid and poofed himself in front of the switch and turned it on just because. But what if there were further reasoning behind his action? The next episode that we're about to check out is one that definitely supports that and is the big one that really made me question Crocker's entire existence. We're diving into an episode that I honestly almost considered pulling from this video because it's a bit of a later episode in the series. It's from the Poof era, which again, I'm not a big fan of, but unlike the one that would come many years later with the dog, which just kind of felt like a weird shoehorned in retcon of good lore, this one genuinely adds a ton towards Mr. Crocker as a character in way too acceptable of a way for me to skip over it. Though it may be part of the poof era, I'd say it gets a pass for the sake of this video. We're looking at the Season 7 episode, Crocker Shocker. As this episode starts out, we see Mr. Crocker in a therapy session with a therapist who specializes in fairy-obsessed patients. He tells the therapist, Dr. Fancyfree, all about how his life and self-image has been destroyed by his obsession with...
No, don't say it!
Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents! Fairy godparents!
I can't take it anymore. I'm going to try something that goes against everything I've been taught as a therapist. I'm going to cure you!
Hypnosis? Ha! The Crocker mind is an impenetrable steel fortress. Hypnosis will never...
Dr. Fancyfree talks to the hypnotized Mr. Crocker, making him repeat over and over that he doesn't believe in fairies. After just a few moments, we see a metamorphosis where Mr. Crocker's back hunch arches its way back into alignment, his ear travels from his neck up to his head where it belongs, and for once, he finally and truly admits that he doesn't believe in fairies. As that happens, Timmy is out on the town just living his best magical life, flying through the streets with Cosmo, Wanda, and Poof, as he doesn't even really consider whether or not all of the people around him can see. Wanda brings up that this is rather conspicuous, however, considering that Timmy doesn't even know what that word means, he doesn't really care. All of a sudden, though, they find themselves running directly into Mr. Crocker, who was just thrown out of his therapist's office, having been cured once and for all.
Mr. Crocker, I can explain.
No need, Timothy. Normally I'd think this was the work of fairy godparents, but I don't believe in them anymore. Clearly you and your magic carpet are just racing a monkey on a unicorn. Nothing unusual here. Cured!
Timmy and his fairies see the building nearby for Dr. Fancyfree's practice, and they connect the dots that Mr. Crocker has been cured of his fairy obsession and won't be hunting them anymore, which has Timmy just stoked to get even more belligerent with his wishes. As he celebrates, we cut over to Jorgen von Strangle, who's enjoying himself with a face mask on, curlers in his hair, and dressed in his comfiest robe and slippers, as he sips some tea, ready to enjoy his favorite show, Dancing with the Elves. Unfortunately for him, though, right as the show starts, his TV and the rest of his electricity cuts off.
Oh no! Fury World is losing power! I bet I know who is responsible. To Turner's house! Oh, darn it!
We see a magical bus pull up outside of Timmy's house as Jorgen steps off in a panic. In his room, Timmy and his fairies are still mid-celebration when Jorgen bursts through the wall like it's a door, asking why all of the magic is disappearing from Fairy World. Naturally, Timmy has no idea as he says they're just celebrating the fact that Mr. Crocker no longer believes in fairies. This, though, catches Jorgen by massive surprise as he says that this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to the fairies as a whole. Due to his lack of magic, he has to use crayons and paper to show a visual to accompany his explanation.
For centuries, we fairies have harnessed the energy that comes from the spazzing of certain humans who believe that fairies exist. When Mr. Crocker first began to spaz about fairies many years ago, his energy was so powerful, we harnessed it to fuel the big giant wand all by itself.
You mean all our magic comes from Mr. Crocker?
Ironic, isn't it?
Jorgen says that the loss of magic has already begun, and that everyone needs to start rationing magic or they're gonna completely run out. Just like that, Poof falls to the ground, unable to float due to diminished magic. And just like that, Jorgen tasks Timmy with getting Mr. Crocker to believe in fairies again, as he quickly runs out of his room, having missed his bus by a hair. At school the next day, Timmy is confident that deep down, Crocker still believes in fairies and that this will be an easy task to accomplish. However, when Mr. Crocker comes walking down the street, turning heads in a fancy suit, the pressure of this task starts to seem a little more daunting. Even Principal Wexelplex, despite their complex history, is falling for him again. For once, he's happier than ever.
Not for long. Once Mr. Crocker sees you guys doing some super cool magic, he'll snap him back to his old self and the power will come back to Fairy World.
Fairy World must be running out of magic quicker than I thought!
Either that or my diaper's full.
At this point, Timmy begins to panic, telling them that they need to do magic to convince Crocker. However, even him blatantly juggling them in front of him while they talk isn't enough to make the new Mr. Crocker believe in fairies again. From there, we cut to later that night, where we see Timmy enacting a new plan. He's at Mr. Crocker's house, where there's currently a party going on, and he plans to pretend that Cosmo and Wanda are magic to convince Mr. Crocker. He rings the doorbell, and Mr. Crocker answers the door, donning a colorful poncho and holding a plate of tacos.
I did bring you a little party surprise.
Look, we're floating!
Yeah, smell the magic.
I don't believe it. It can't possibly be. It's...
Say it, Mr. Crocker, say it!
Fancy talking piñatas! Oh, thank you, Turner!
Considering Mr. Crocker isn't buying into Cosmo and Wanda, Timmy decides that it's time to bring Mr. Crocker directly to the magic. We cut right over to Fairy World, which is rather dull compared to its usual bright, shiny, and colorful scenery. Most of the houses and buildings are for sale, and the fairies are either in line for free soup or huddled around a fire barrel. Nearby, a bus drops off Timmy, who has his fairies in his backpack, and Mr. Crocker trapped in a burlap sack. Mr. Crocker fights his way out of the bag, and when he sees the state of Fairy World, he's none too convinced.
Fairy World? I've seen more magic at a bus stop in Toledo! But that's a story for another time.
Whoa! Without magic, Fairy World looks horrible!
Turner, you're almost out of power! The big giant wand is empty! If we don't restore power, Fairy World will fall out of the sky!
When Mr. Crocker hears what Jorgen is saying, he recommends that he see Dr. Fancyfree, passing him a business card. This gets Timmy thinking. If she was able to cure Mr. Crocker, maybe she can uncure him too. Wanda squeezes the last little bit of magic out of Cosmo and uses it to poof them over to her office, which now shows her listed as a couples therapist.
I eat goat meat one lousy time and he can't let it go. I'm only human. I have needs too.
Don't worry, Mayor. Once I hypnotize Chompy, he'll completely forget about your indiscretions. But to protect myself from lawsuits, I always include a secret phrase to undo the trance. It's something no one would ever say to a patient.
This makes Timmy realize that all they need to do is learn Mr. Crocker's secret phrase, and they should be able to use it to undo all of this. At that, Cosmo excitedly says that he can do that as he poofs them all back to Fairy World. Once they get there though, Timmy starts going off on him, saying that they needed to ask Dr. Fancyfree the phrase, not come back to Fairy World. As luck would have it too, they're now completely out of magic and unable to poof back to her office. Just then, the rest of Fairy World runs out of magic as well, as it begins to fall out of the sky.
If we don't get some power back, we will plunge right into Giant Bucket of Acid World!
You built Fairy World over a place called Giant Bucket of Acid World?
In hindsight, I see it was not the best idea.
Timmy and everyone else run over to Mr. Crocker, trying to figure out the one thing that no one would ever say to him. However, no amount of compliments do the trick.
Mr. Crocker, you've won the Nobel Prize!
Mr. Crocker, I think it is cool that you live with your mother!
Seriously, Mr. Crocker, nice ham!
Wait a minute, I've got it! I can't believe I'm saying this, but Mr. Crocker, you're the best teacher ever!
as soon as those words leave Timmy's mouth, we see Mr. Crocker's metamorphosis reversed. His ear moves back to his neck, his hunch regrows, and his obsession with fairies comes back with a vengeance. Before you know it, he's running around Fairy World, losing his mind at all of the fairies everywhere, which causes the descent to stop abruptly.
Jorgen, I hope you've learned that you can't rely on Crocker to power Fairy World single-handedly.
Don't worry, we are not going to rely on one lone nut job for power anymore. We are going to rely on all the nut jobs in the world.
Jorgen grabs Crocker and tells Timmy to get him out of here before he causes a huge mess, and next thing you know, we see him back in Dr. Fancy Free's office, strapped to the chair so that he can't destroy her office yet again. Considering that the hypnosis seemed to not work, she decides that she's gonna start fresh with him.
There's no such thing as...
Fairies! I see fairies! 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 Fairies!
You go, girl! Fairy godparents!
Now, this is an episode that puts it all into perspective. Up to this point in the series, we've seen a lot of explanation of how Mr. Crocker ended up the way that he did, and why he refuses to stop pursuing fairies, but we've never really seen much into the why of everything. Up until this episode, it just kind of seemed like it was a grudge that he was holding, having been wronged by Jorgen and the rest of the fairies. With all of this extra context, though, the tale that's been weaved up until this point becomes considerably darker. The big, obvious tipping point was, of course, when the revelation comes that Crocker is powering Fairy World with his madness. However, the darkest and most concerning part of it all is how Crocker being in this position is kind of spun as a funny and ironic twist by Wanda and Jorgen. To them, it's just like, well, how about that, huh? He hunts us, but we need him. The irony is so funny. But beyond this cruel manipulation that they shrug off without much of a thought, is the key to a puzzle that reveals a truth that hits like a ton of bricks. Looking back to the past, Cosmo and Wanda were given to Mr. Crocker as a child because his life was so awful at home. Then, at the fault of fairies, specifically Cosmo, and subsequently altered in a time loop to be doubled down upon by Timmy, the big secret is revealed and it causes Denzel Crocker's fairies to be taken away. The biggest part we need to keep in mind, though, is the fact that when all of this happened, Jorgen, with his mind wiper, was the one single-handedly responsible for Mr. Crocker being turned into this twisted shell of his former self. Mr. Crocker got blasted over and over again, even though it was clearly affecting him negatively. Jorgen didn't care at all, though. Just like he didn't care when he started stealing energy from Mr. Crocker that he was generating as a result of Jorgen ruining his life. As if it wasn't bad enough that they turned this kid into a shell of his former self, they had the audacity to capitalize upon and benefit from the miserable persona that they forced him into. So another thing that we need to take into consideration is the fact that time travel is a thing in this show. That was established pretty early on in the grand scheme of things, as a matter of fact. Furthermore, it's seemingly encouraged, the way that 70s Jorgen was telling Timmy about how he's welcome to muck around in any other month of 1972. With that in mind, though, plus knowing that ultimately this is where Crocker's transformation would push Fairy World as an entity, it really just makes you question things further. We can't help but wonder if Timmy going back in time to fix Mr. Crocker could have ever been a successful mission. Would the fairies ever have allowed that to happen? In the current time where Timmy makes the decision to go back in time to try to help him on March 15th, we know that they had already been getting energy from Mr. Crocker, according to this episode. With that at the forefront of our minds here, we have to think about Cosmo being conveniently poofed directly in front of the switch for the PA system right at the perfect time to reveal Mr. Crocker's secret. Sure, maybe he just poofed himself there, but it wouldn't take too far of a stretch to think that a higher power could have been at play to send Cosmo there. I mean, it was kind of odd that modern day Jorgen just appeared out of nowhere next to 70s Jorgen, almost as if he had been there all along. I'll admit, it is a stretch of the mind, but with those pieces of the puzzle in place, it's not too far from reality. Who's to say, maybe in a different timeline, Timmy's plan worked and Mr. Crocker didn't lose his fairies at the Denzel Crocker Day ceremony. However, what if because Timmy did that, Jorgen went back in time to foil his plan? Whether that could even be close to the actual truth or not, we as viewers really have to wonder. Is there any universe where the fairies just let Mr. Crocker live a normal lifestyle? Now, one thing that's truly disturbing about this episode and this point in the story is that instead of how we've seen him behave in the past, Timmy's in on it, and instead of wanting to support Mr. Crocker and living a normal life for once, he's trying to lure him back into the same trap that he's been in for decades now. Timmy doesn't even stop to think for a second about how good Mr. Crocker finally has it for once. Instead, he's fixated on how bad that everyone else has it now. I mean, finally, we're seeing Mr. Crocker tasting a bit of social success and happiness. But his happiness and success is at the detriment of the entirety of Fairy World. So Timmy doesn't consider his happiness. He also doesn't consider the fact that it's kind of messed up that the fairies are taking this energy from Cosmo. He also doesn't stop to consider the fact that it's pretty messed up that the fairies are taking this energy from Crocker when they're the ones who made him this way to begin with. Ultimately, it's kind of like a messed up version of the famous trolley question. The big twist of fate in this one, though, is that in all reality, the real issue here is that back in the 70s, the fairies started this entire problem by preying on Mr. Crocker's insanity that they caused. And B, the cold hard truth is that from Timmy and everyone else's point of view, it's too late for Mr. Crocker, and they accepted his chaotic fairy-obsessed nature long ago. They're desensitized to the idea of him being mistreated. It's to the point where they've siphoned his energy for so long that they've become heavily reliant on it. I'll say it again. It's completely messed up to realize that the fairies basically forced Mr. Crocker to be insane so that they could use him, and Timmy is just completely okay with this. As far as Timmy's concerned, this just goes against quite a bit that they established about him as a character in the past. Honestly, I feel like the Timmy Turner who once wanted to help Denzel Crocker avoid the worst day of his life would not be okay with this. Now, that's not to give Timmy too much credit, considering that him wanting to do that was for selfish reasons, centered around freeing himself from Mr. Crocker's pursuit. But like, the kid who felt guilty about this happening certainly wouldn't be okay with just accepting that him doing this would lead to Mr. Crocker living a life doomed to always be crazy because Fairy World depends on him. On that note though, on like the most basic level, just let that sink in. The entire existence of their world completely revolves around Mr. Crocker being obsessed with fairy godparents to the point that he lets it ruin his life. They have full-blown built structural foundation that relies on him at this point. It's almost disgusting how much they're taking from him in order to power their own world. And for them, there's absolutely no shame in it. Jorgen gets questioned about it, and though he acknowledges the irony, he doesn't accept responsibility for even a second. It's like Jorgen this late in the series doesn't even remember that he was the one who took the mind wiper to Crocker way too many times when he was a kid. He doesn't even remember that it's his fault that Mr. Crocker is the way that he is. And the fact that he doesn't just kind of makes this episode so much more nauseating. Now, one other thing that was really telling in this episode is the fact that Mr. Crocker's secret phrase was,
"You're the best teacher ever!"
That right there is just so awful. Especially considering that his own therapist picked the secret phrase. Like, on one hand, the one that's in your face, it's her saying that she has no faith in him. It's the blatant implication that she believes no amount of curing will ever make Mr. Crocker a good teacher. It really does make you wonder what about his personality that she uncovered that would lead her to making that conclusion. On the other hand though, the one that's not as in plain sight, it shows that his dislike of his job and his students goes a lot deeper than face value. What it really boils down to is that Mr. Crocker never wanted this life. He never wanted to be a teacher. He only got this job to help further his pursuit of fairy godparents, just like he said in the Secret Origin episode. With that in mind, yeah, even without the obsession with fairies, he's never going to have his heart in this job because, if we're being honest, being a teacher is usually something that begins with a drive and passion, not just some random career choice that you pick because you needed to choose one. The fact that he never wanted this ultimately leads to the conclusion that he's never really going to be able to apply himself in the same way as somebody who did want to be a teacher. The cold hard truth there is the fact that his therapist was banking on the fact that, especially without his fairy obsession, he was never going to be a good teacher. Because at this point, he doesn't even have that making him want to be there. Now, going in a bit of a different direction, we have to talk about the fact that all of the different fairy-obsessed people across the world that they showed looked identical to Crocker. I mean, that's obviously supposed to be a joke, but when we consider our theory in its entirety, it's certainly worth calling into question. Personally, I'm wondering if the fairies could have, strategically placed Crocker clones all over the globe to power their floating world for years to come. I mean, if these worldwide Crockers were already there the whole time, couldn't they have just tapped into their power to stop the descent of Fairy World when it came down to it, and let the original Crocker be free of his obsession to enjoy his new life? It really just kind of feels like they decided to bring the old Crocker back to continue to siphon energy from him, while at the same time getting backup energy from all of these other Crockers that they placed all over the world as an insurance policy. Of course, that could just be me turning into a Mr. Crocker level conspiracy theorist at this point, but again, it's something that I'd certainly say was at least worth bringing up. Now, if there was anything else that I want to bring up, it would be the portrayal of the therapist, especially highlighting the beginning of this episode. We see her getting so fed up with Mr. Crocker that she says she's going to do something that goes against everything she was ever taught, curing him once and for all. Now, obviously, this was her saying that she was always taught that hypnotism isn't a valid way of helping her patients heal. I mean, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I think it was supposed to be a portrayal of the fact that when it comes to dealing with problems like this, it's best to heal yourself inward to overcome them, not use a device like hypnotism to change who you are completely. But the way that they wrote that sentence was clear as day a jab at the American medical system. Of course, too, the irony at the end when the therapist ends up basically in the same exact boat as Mr. Crocker, having a fairy obsession complete with identical outbursts to his. It's just such a hilarious representation, and of anything, I appreciate this episode for that. Not to say this one was a bad episode per se, but all in all, I feel like this was kind of at the point where the show had started to overstay its welcome, and this season was about the point where it probably should have been getting ready to call it a day. This next episode that we're going to dive into, though, is a classic one. This season 4 episode would feel right at home next to the earlier episodes in my opinion. However, it's also one that would be a very huge example of just how far Mr. Crocker is willing to go to expose the truth. Furthermore, it's an episode that circles back to a really chilling point that I brought up earlier. How terrifyingly correct that Mr. Crocker is in his conspiracies. We're diving into the episode Mind Over Magic. This episode starts out at school where something really unexpected is happening. Crocker is actually enjoying his job for once. It's exactly 1 minute before school gets out, and he says that's the perfect time for a pop quiz. Unfortunately for his students, though, when none of them can tell him how many seconds are in a year on Mars, Mr. Crocker ends up making it rain F's down upon them from above. The next day at lunch, we see the same exact thing happen when the kids are all just trying to eat, and he jumps out of nowhere to pop quiz them on how much vitamin B12 is the recommended daily dose.
It's an F-a-palooza! All you can eat F!
Wow! Look at all the failure!
Feeling fed up with all of the pop quizzes and wanting to get ahead of Crocker once and for all, Timmy decides to wish that he could read minds. Cosmo and Wanda grant his wish, and we see his brain transform as he's given his new ability. He ends up testing it out on Wanda, and he's stoked to hear that it works perfectly.
Okay, Cosmo, let's read your mind. Elevator music?
You can't hear his thoughts because there's nothing going on in there.
Oh yeah? Then what's this rattling?
Oh, my stuff! Cosmo's empty head is such a convenient carrying case.
Timmy says that he's actually excited to go to school for once, and just like that, we cut to the next day where Mr. Crocker is playing with Super F while sitting at his desk at the start of class. Timmy walks in and immediately reads his mind to learn that he's about to pop quiz them on the capital of Botswana, and with nothing more than a giggle, he goes to sit at his desk.
Pop quiz! What is the capital of Botswana? You!
Gaborone!
Wrong! F! I mean, right! Hey! I don't understand! How could I have failed? Where did I go wrong? Did I leave the curling iron on?
As Mr. Crocker contemplates his life choices and where he messed up, Timmy celebrates, happy about this victory. After class in the halls, we see Timmy going to his locker, and as soon as he opens it, he finds Mr. Crocker waiting for him inside.
Millard Fillmore, 13th president. Your mother called you Flippy. See ya!
There's only one way a student could be so totally prepared for my quizzes and know that my mother called me Flippy. He was given mind-reading powers by... We
fast forward a few days where Timmy is getting home from school and telling Cosmo and Wanda about how great it is that Crocker hasn't given the class a pop quiz in 2 days because he feels defeated by Timmy.
Great, Timmy. So, are you ready to stop reading minds? Before you start using your powers to mess with your friends' heads like a big show-offy jerk?
Oh, now there's a thought.
Timmy, wait! Instead of messing around with your friends' heads like a big show-offy jerk, how about a nice picnic? Look, I packed a lunch!
It stays fresh because my head is vacuum sealed! Cool! Dinner theater!
As the day progresses, we see Timmy going around and reading the minds of his peers and learning about their inner thoughts. Along the way, he learns that there's a surprise birthday party planned for him in the gym at 3 o'clock. Meanwhile, we learn that Mr. Crocker is working on a helmet that'll stop Timmy from reading his mind, so that he can get the jump on him and catch his fairy godparents once and for all.
Timmy, something is very wrong! Yeah, it's not your birthday. If it was, she'd have put a cake in my head.
Guys, relax. I'll meet you in the gym at 3 o'clock. It's perfectly safe. You guys can hide, and if anything goes wrong, you'll be there for me.
To make it better. Or worse. I don't know which. I'm not a mind reader.
Come 3 p.m., Timmy arrives at the gym at the guidance of a note that was left on his locker, in pure excitement as he expects a massive party to honor him. When he walks in, though, he's shocked to find that the party has been orchestrated by none other than Mr. Crocker, who, at the press of a button, has his mind-blocking helmet lowered from the ceiling and attached to his head.
Guess what I'm thinking? Oh, that's right. You can't!
Hey! I'm reading my own mind! Ow! I read my own mind!
Something wrong, Turner?
Just a headache. I gotta go.
As Timmy heads to leave, the kids block his exit, not wanting him to leave his own party. From there, Mr. Crocker instructs them through a game where they think their favorite color in their mind as loud as they can. At that, Timmy begins to become overwhelmed and his brain starts to overheat from the sheer amount of thoughts surrounding him.
Want the pain to stop, Turner? Then admit it! Admit that you have very good parents!
Never! Gotta find Cosmo or Wanda on Wish!
Timmy falls to the ground, overwhelmed with pain, as all of the kids think that he's doing some sort of new dance. Just then, Crocker pulls out a camera and a net, hoping to record the moment that Timmy admits that he has fairies. But as he's doing that, Timmy's using what little strength he has left to continue looking for Cosmo and Wanda. Eventually, he ends up hearing Cosmo's elevator music coming from the bin of basketballs, and he picks them up, thankful to be able to wish his mind-reading ability away.
Awesome! I can't hear anyone's thoughts except my own. Cool! All right! I'll admit! I'll admit! It's not my birthday! Pop quiz! Who promised you candy if you'd all come to the gym and pretend it was my birthday? Crocker!
At the realization that Crocker didn't come through in all of the promises that he made the kids, they all turn on him. Francis pulls on the rope that's holding Mr. Crocker's helmet up, causing him to be hoisted into the air for all of the kids to use him as a piñata. As Mr. Crocker gets his comeuppance in the form of a proper ass whooping, Timmy walks out of the gym, thankful that Cosmo's empty-headedness was actually able to save the day for once.
Who are you calling empty-headed? I'm not empty-headed. Look, see? I've got candy. And Chip Skylark! Take it away, Chip!
My shiny teeth that twinkle, just like the stars in space. My shiny teeth that sparkle, and beauty to my face. My shiny teeth and me.
Now, this one is an episode that I appreciate on so many levels. It's a rather simple Crocker episode, and it's one that has a lot of classic throwbacks, such as Chip Skylark at the end. But on top of that, it really showed a true portrayal of just how capable Crocker can be when he has the right tools. Like we touched on previously, this is yet another episode where not only is Mr. Crocker completely spot on with his conspiracy, but he's also got the equipment to back it up. Just like how in Transparents we saw him invent a fairy tracker that worked perfectly, this episode would see him creating the mind-blocking helmet that was fully functional and had no flaws other than being way too big to wear without some sort of apparatus to assist the user. It's kind of odd how sometimes this man is using egg beaters and rubber bands to create things and feeling frustrated that they don't work, and other times he's creating devices that are actually rather impressive. This even further kind of makes me question things, because at this point, character development just kind of feels like it's going out the window. It's like in some episodes Mr. Crocker is worthless, and in others he's actually a valid threat to Timmy and the fairies. It starts to make you wonder if it's just due to a complete lack of consistency on the writer's part, or if we're juggling timelines in a multiverse theory type of way. As far as Crocker goes and his role in the grand scheme of things though, this one really portrays how his position is a really tough one to be in. Like, for most people constructing a conspiracy and falling down a rabbit hole, being more accurate can tend to be something that they wear as a badge of honor. When one of their conspiracies is proven to be true through substantial evidence, it's like a glorious "I told you so" moment for that person who's been obsessing over that theory for who knows how long. In Mr. Crocker's case, though, the more accurate he is in his conspiracy that he's dedicated his life to, the worse things seem to get for him. If there's anything we've seen across all of the episodes that we've checked out so far, it would be that the more correct his conspiracies are, the more people think he's insane due to the fact that Timmy's reality that Mr. Crocker is onto really is a truly unbelievable one. Timmy having fairies, fairy world existing, and even the specific plots that Timmy gets involved in. Mr. Crocker guesses nearly all of it perfectly, and it's pretty baffling to say the least. Like, this guy not only knows that fairy godparents exist, but he also knows specifically that Timmy has fairy godparents. In the end of every single plot that this guy pulls though, he either ends up looking crazier than ever, ends up getting hurt, or in the case of this one, both. Timmy exposed to everyone the fact that Crocker promised them all candy if they pretended it was his birthday. Like, that in and of itself is just weird. Mr. Crocker targeting a student and plotting against them is weird. I feel like if Timmy told the principal about that, Mr. Crocker would probably be looked into for targeting this child. Or maybe he wouldn't because the adults in this show suck. She'd probably just give him detention. But regardless, not only did Timmy expose Mr. Crocker's plot, but he also turned everyone against him and got him beaten up. And sure, he was trying to pull an evil plot, but at the end of the day, it does need to be pointed out that he was able to spot on, down to the detail, figure out that Timmy had used his fairy godparents to wish for the ability to read minds. Unpacking Crocker more as a character, we definitely have to touch a bit on the amount of joy that he gets out of making his students miserable, and particularly failing them for no reason. Like, this man hates his job and his life in general, but the one single thing that brings him joy is spreading his anguish to everyone around him that he can. He wants every single person around him to be at least a fraction as miserable as he is. If anything, we can say that Mr. Crocker is kind of the embodiment of misery loves company. At the end of the day, though, when he's miserable as a result of something that was completely out of his control, it's hard to blame him. On top of that, the man's a laughingstock in general. Every single person that knows who he is thinks that he is absolutely bonkers. It's to the point where even when he shows proof of fairy godparents in the form of pictures, people won't believe him because something like that is truly outlandish in the first place. But furthermore, every time he tries to explain his theory, he ends up having a huge fit over fairy godparents. Every time he tries to explain his theory, he ends up having a fairy godparents outburst, and when people see that, they seem to immediately delegitimize whatever it is that he's saying. The reason behind that? Obviously, his obsession. But when we follow the trail of breadcrumbs left behind from the story told so far, it all stems from the moment where Jorgen von Strangle used the mind wiper on him an excessive amount of times. That was the moment that led to Denzel Crocker's life-consuming obsession, and as a result of that happening, everyone around him began to see him as a crazy person. Ultimately, the truth at the core of it all is that no matter how right he was, or how far he pushed, he could never truly win. Even with undeniable evidence, he'd never be able to convince everyone of the truth unless he forced them to believe him. This next episode, though, puts a completely different spin on everything. For once, Mr. Crocker doesn't just uncover the truth, he wields it like a weapon, forcing everyone to listen to him once and for all. This next one is actually a made-for-TV movie that would take place during Season 3. We're diving into none other than Abra Catastrophe. So this episode starts out in the middle of the night with Timmy sleeping restless as he has multiple nightmares about people trying to get him to spill the beans about his fairies. We see him playing the role of Luke in a Star Wars inspired dream, Peter Parker in a Spider-Man inspired dream, and Dr. Grant in a Jurassic Park inspired dream. All of which, oddly enough, see Cosmo and Wanda playing the villains trying to expose Timmy's secret. Eventually, though, we learn that this was actually a trick by them to keep Timmy busy while they gathered every magical being that he's ever met to celebrate his 1-year fairyversary.
Yes, Uniturner, even I, Jorgen von Strangle, toughest fairy in the universe, who fears nothing, cannot help but be happy for... Oh! A deadly butterfly net! I'm as frightened as a little kitten! No! Mommy!
Wanda explains that all of the fairies are terrified of butterfly nets because they're one of the few everyday items that their magic has no effect over. Fast forwarding from there though, as the party continues, we see Mr. Crocker rolling through neighborhoods looking for fairies in his high-tech van that he has disguised as an ice cream truck so as to not draw attention to himself. I will admit though, I do find these inconsistencies with Mr. Crocker's life just so odd sometimes. Like we've seen episodes where this van is a falling apart piece of crap that he hates, but then there's episodes like this one where the van isn't falling to pieces and actually works as intended. Regardless of that though, as the episode continues, we learn that the 1-year fairyversary is actually a pretty big deal, as most kids are too irresponsible to keep their fairy godparents a secret for even that long.
Hey, are those fairy godparents? They sure are!
Everybody celebrates Timmy not blowing it for an entire 365 days. For the momentous occasion, Wanda created a device called the Forget Me Knob, which is a doorknob that makes whoever touches it forget what they were doing, so they don't need to worry about Timmy's parents. The party ends up going off without a hitch, and at the end, Timmy finds himself taking inventory of all the special magical gifts that he got from his party guests. At that though, Wanda says there's one last gift that he hasn't received yet. Just then, Jorgen von Strangle shows up out of nowhere holding a tray that has Timmy's special fairyversary muffin on it.
Whoever eats the muffin gets one rule-free wish! A rule-free wish? I can wish for anything I want? Love? Money? Anything?
You just can't wish for a better tasting muffin.
And only children who have lasted an entire year can be trusted with that kind of gift. So don't goof it up!
As Timmy sits there reflecting on how careful he has to be with the muffin to stop it from falling into the wrong hands, like clockwork, we cut over to Mr. Crocker, who is in his van using his magical tracking technology to pick up on the energy coming from the muffin.
According to my sensors, there's a massive muffin-shaped source of fairy energy in Timmy Turner's house. And where there is fairy energy, there are bound to be fairy godparents! Once I capture a fairy using this special butterfly net, I, Mr. Crocker, will go from being a second-rate, constantly mocked elementary school teacher to a first-class, not constantly mocked, supreme magical ruler of the universe!
From there, we see Timmy with his fairies as he reflects on how lucky he was to have ever gotten them in the first place. As much as they appreciate that sentiment though, Wanda points out how it was actually the opposite that got them placed with him to begin with. We get a nice flashback to Timmy's early childhood where his dad cared so much about recording every precious moment with him that he would neglect his relationship with his wife and didn't really ever do anything for himself. He feels like he doesn't want to share Timmy's childhood with anybody. Oddly enough, it would be his attempt to record the first ever white lie that they told Timmy that would lead to them making Timmy think that he was left alone, and in a panic, he calls Vicky, whose babysitting flyer was sitting crumpled up in the trash can. When Vicky arrives, it doesn't take much for her to convince Mr. Turner to let her take the reins of raising Timmy and recording every last bit for him. As you'd expect though, as soon as they leave, she destroys his childhood tapes and immediately puts him to work. After an entire year straight of her torturing him, that's when Cosmo and Wanda showed up. Somehow, having forgotten all of this, Timmy is now really heartbroken and upset to realize that the way he used to live was completely ruined by something that's been minimized to a little white lie by everybody around him.
Timmy, time for school! How do I know that's the truth? Man, I wish they didn't lie to me.
Did we just make it so Timmy's parents couldn't lie to him? Yep. You've gained weight. You know, we can still lie to each other. Yeah, I know.
Poor Timmy ends up falling into a depression, ending up face first in his breakfast while his parents sit at the table wondering what's wrong. He confronts them about their lying, but due to his wish, they're forced to come clean, admitting that not only do they lie literally more than they tell the truth, they also don't really care about the fact that they lie because it makes life easier. As they keep digging deeper and deeper, the bus shows up right in the nick of time to bail them out of this conversation. They toss Timmy out of the house, and as the school bus drives away, Mr. Crocker sees the magic source leaving, so he changes his ice cream truck into a spinach truck to drive away the kids so that he can pursue Timmy.
My instruments indicate that the concentration of magical energy is dead ahead. Aha!
Hey! Bippy, stop rolling around in the mud.
Timmy's muffin rolls away and ends up being picked up by a guy wheeling in a cart full of pastries. He takes a bite, and due to the awful taste, he wishes that he had some mouthwash. Of course, when his wish comes true, he's mind blown. Unfortunately for Timmy, right at that moment the bell rings, and in the wave of students, he ends up losing the pastry guy and getting further separated from his muffin. Meanwhile...
How big is this muffin-shaped source of magic anyway?
Crocker! What's the meaning of this fork in my fanny?
It's Cupid's fork of love. I love you!
Oh, well, this is so sudden and unwanted.
Oops, gotta teach. I'll call you.
Back in class, Mr. Crocker isn't really teaching anything. He's just kind of going off about fairies and how they could make 2 + 2 equal fish if they wanted to. Ultimately, he just instructs the kids to stare at the board until the lunch bell rings. When it does, everyone excitedly runs to eat except for Timmy, who's shocked to see that he's been chained to his desk by Mr. Crocker.
Going somewhere, Turner? Let me answer that for you. No!
Why'd you chain me to my desk?
So you won't get in my way, of course. I need to keep you here so I can find your muffin-shaped source of magical energy before you do, and prove once and for all the existence of Fairy Godparents!
Mr. Crocker goes off to pursue the muffin, which Timmy learns he can't just simply wish he had back in his possession, because as a magical item itself, the muffin can't be affected by normal fairy magic. He can, however, wish himself free in hopes of beating Mr. Crocker to it. Timmy races to the cafeteria, and as he walks in, he starts to lose hope when he sees that it's Muffin Monday, and every kid in the cafeteria is happily eating muffins.
I thought it was Monkey Monday.
Aw, great! What am I supposed to do with this? Oh no! Crocker's gonna get the muffin first! Muffin! Muffin! Muffin!
Muffin? Muffin?
Sanjay ends up being served the magic muffin, and Mr. Crocker approaches him with it before Timmy can, so at the last second, Timmy decides to call a food fight, causing the entire lunchroom to burst into a massive war zone of flying pastries. As the whole lunchroom erupts into complete disarray, Timmy ends up walking up to Bippy the monkey's cage and letting him out so he can get in on the fun as well. At one point, Sanjay ends up throwing the magical muffin instead of eating it. Thankfully, Mr. Crocker doesn't get his hands on it. However, in the muffin madness, Timmy ends up tripping on Chester's muffler and falling, causing him to miss catching the muffin that Sanjay threw. It ends up landing directly in front of AJ's monkey, who curiously takes a bite of it. The entire world and every major monument within it ends up turning into something out of a deep hidden jungle. Bridges being replaced with bananas and statues of humans being swapped with primates, among many other major changes. As Timmy finds himself dropped in the middle of this planet of the apes under the watchful eye of his new primate overlords, Jorgen von Strangle pops up out of nowhere, taking Cosmo and Wanda and poofing the three of them back to Fairy World, leaving Timmy alone to figure all this out on his own. We see a meeting with every single fairy in existence as Jorgen von Strangle assesses the situation at hand. He says that since the new dominant species on Earth is monkeys, every single fairy is going to be reassigned to their own individual primate child to watch over. Since they were responsible for all of this happening in the first place, it's decided that Cosmo and Wanda are going to be the first assigned.
He is an average chimp that no one understands. Mom and Dad and Big Ape always giving him commands. The ticks and fleas up in those trees are coming down instantly. By his magic little ants with every wish they grant. Cause in reality, they are his odd primates, fairly odd primates.
One and wing, rabbit-taily thing!
Timmy finds himself waking up in his bedroom, fairyless, and shocked to learn that none of this was a dream. Timmy ends up catching the school vine, and as he arrives at school, he finds himself thankful that he'll be able to see the one person who should still have the tools he needs to track down the magic muffin.
And that, class, is how the founding alpha males signed the Declaration of Independence, forming the United Apes of America.
You know, if it weren't for the fact that what he's saying is historically accurate, I would say that's a horrible pun.
Well, I, for one, am grateful to live in a world wherein our ape overlords allow us to share in their hilarious sense of wordplay.
In this world, Mr. Crocker still believes in fairies. He starts going off about how apes have fairies, and if someone got their hands on a fairy, they could wish that humans were the dominant species. Of course, just like in the normal timeline, everyone laughs at him and calls him crazy.
Here we go with the apes have fairies theory again.
But one day, I, Mr. Crocker, will travel to the apes' forbidden city and capture one of the apes' magical parents.
Forbidden City.
And then I shall be the supreme magical ruler of man and ape. And now I'm gonna do I will be the ruler of man and ape dance. Oh, I am the master of man and ape. I am the ruler of man and ape.
The ape overlords come into the classroom and take Mr. Crocker away for his treason, and with him out of the way, Timmy is able to escape so he can try to find some of Mr. Crocker's fairy hunting technology. He makes his way to Crocker's locker, and inside he pushes a button which sends him down a slide and into the new and improved Crocker Cave. which instead of just a phone booth is now a full-blown laboratory that he's got underneath the school. Timmy looks through Crocker's lab until he comes across his fairy tracking device, which he takes to hopefully track down Cosmo and Wanda. This leads him on a journey to the primates' secret forbidden city, which is an entire civilization that they've built modeled after how mankind once lived. There are salons, construction sites, and even a human catcher who's constantly on the watch for any humans that find themselves loose in the city. Timmy ends up finding Cosmo, Wanda, and the Muffin. However, with them being Bippy's fairies now, they can't help Timmy wish the world back to normal. Even worse, Timmy ends up getting caught by the human catcher. Luckily for him though, Bippy is curious about what happens to all the humans that are caught, so he sneaks on top of the van with Cosmo and Wanda to find out where they're taking Timmy. Fast forwarding a while, Timmy finds himself in a large room with a ton of other caged up humans who are being held captive, and Bippy who snuck into the room with Cosmo and Wanda.
Well, this is certainly an unpleasant situation. But on the bright side, I finally have my own apartment away from my mother! I should have a dinner party on Friday. Turner! If the ape overlords haven't dissected you by Friday, do you want to come to my fancy dinner party? I'm serving shrimp puffs.
Shrimp puffs are gross. Dissect me? I gotta get out of here before I'm cut up and or forced to eat shrimp puffs!
As Timmy panics about his uncertain future, Bippy sees him in captivity and remembers Timmy being the one person who set him free when the roles were reversed. Before Bippy can set him free, though, the guards come back in.
No! Don't take me! I'm hosting a party on Friday! Take him!
What?
What about you? How do you feel about shrimp puffs?
Bippy ends up chasing after Timmy with Cosmo and Wanda, but as he exits, the muffin he's holding gets knocked out of his tail by the door, leading it to fall right in front of Crocker's cage. As that's happening, we see the gorillas about to dissect Timmy's brain. However, Bippy stops them right at the last moment, putting up quite the fight as Cosmo and Wanda turn themselves into surgical supplies to talk to Timmy. Unfortunately though, Bippy ends up being defeated by the gorillas, and they nearly end up using Cosmo the scalpel to remove Timmy's brain. Right when he's just out of time though, Bippy ends up wishing everything back to normal. As the entire world turns back to the way it was before and Cosmo and Wanda are returned to Timmy, he realizes that the muffin is still missing. Connecting the dots that Crocker must have gotten his hands on it. Speak of the devil, the man himself ends up not too far away from Timmy and realizing that he finally got his hands on the magic muffin that he's been pursuing this entire time. He takes a bite and revels in the power as he feels the magic flowing through him.
I can wish for anything! But why should I only settle for one lousy wish when I can have as many as I want? All I have to do is say the magic words. I wish I could capture a fairy godparent!
The butterfly net ends up magically stretching on its own over to Timmy, Cosmo, Wanda, and Bippy, who have no clue that Crocker showed up near them. Wanda ends up seeing the net as it approaches, however, she only has time to save the guys as she herself ends up getting caught.
Let me out! Let me out!
I finally captured a fairy!
Oh no!
Let me out of this accursed thing!
You're not going anywhere, little fairy, and I will use your magic to make the world exactly what I want it to be! Mine!
Very quickly, Jorgen von Strangle gets word that a fairy on Earth has been captured by a human with a butterfly net, and he decides to go on the extreme defense. He arms all of their troops and single-handedly destroys the bridge between Fairy World and Earth.
Now the humans will never be able to reach us with their butterfly nets of death.
But, sir, we usually just poof to Earth. We didn't have to destroy the bridge.
I like to destroy the bridge! As long as that crazy fairy hunting teacher has a fairy, no more fairies will be allowed on Earth! And thus, I return to my bath.
Back on Earth, Cosmo starts to panic about the fact that Wanda was taken, saying that he's nothing without her, and that she's the one that holds him together. With that being said, he's completely useless in Timmy's quest to get her back. The next day at school, we see Mr. Crocker arrive in a magic suit similar to that of Galactus, as he has a huge announcement to share with the class.
I'm quitting teaching! I'm quitting teaching to be ruler of the universe!
Crocker's got the muffin!
Say goodbye to your free will, children!
Wanda!
Now, bow down before my power, because finally, the fairy's magic is mine! All mine!
Crocker starts using his magic to torture all of his students, turning them into ice sculptures and toilets before Timmy decides to step in. He shouts at Mr. Crocker to distract him and runs off with him in hot pursuit. As Crocker gives chase, he tries to attack Timmy with his magic. As Timmy runs though, he wishes that Cosmo was a magical shield, and much to even his own surprise, Cosmo's able to pull it off without Wanda there to help him. Timmy's able to deflect Crocker's magic with Cosmo, and that's when he remembers that magic can't affect other magical items. Hence why he couldn't just wish that he had the muffin earlier. At that, he also remembers all of the other magical items that he has back at home from his fairyversary party. He tries to have Cosmo poof him back to the house, but sadly, the best he can do is turn himself into a mouse. So instead, Timmy just rides him home. On the way though, Mr. Crocker's plan comes to full fruition as his magic begins to overtake everything. The school bursts into flames as the flag on top of it is washed over in the image of Crocker's New World Order. The magic continues to flow out of the school and all over the world as Crocker stabs his staff into the ground, claiming himself as the god of this new universe that he's shaping. We see all major world monuments transform into Crocker's likeness as his magic overtakes every single aspect of this universe. Before it can hit Timmy though, he's able to hide under his bed and ultimately inside of Santa's magical sack, which is unaffected by Crocker's magic.
Hey, what's with those clothes that express some sort of individuality?
Now we have to turn you over to Crocker.
I'm your son! You can't turn me over to Crocker! He's insane!
Well, you are our only son. I suppose we could forgive you this one times 2 equals 2. Why would I be thinking about multiplication at a time like this?
I don't know, but I do think that kittens are adorable. Let's go find some.
His parents walk off confused as Timmy starts plotting with Cosmo about how he's gonna save Wanda and get everything back to normal. He realizes that with Cosmo out of commission and Crocker controlling all of the magic, his only option to save the universe is to somehow get the muffin away from Crocker. We see Timmy dramatically suit up with every single magical item that was gifted to him at his party that we saw at the start of the episode, and he heads off to face Mr. Crocker once and for all. Over in the heart of the Crockerverse, we see a large golden Crocker castle featuring an effigy of him. Inside, Mr. Crocker sits on his throne, taunting Wanda and enjoying his new world order.
Fancy that? It's time for the hourly bowing down ceremony.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Chet You Bow Down, and it's time to bow down before our Lord and Master, Mr. Crocker. Let's get ready to bow down!
As Crocker tortures Wanda and torments everyone by making it rain shrimp puffs from above, Timmy approaches in the distance. Unfortunately, Cosmo cracks under the pressure though, and he panics, leaving Timmy to handle Crocker on his own. As Timmy approaches the battle, he seems to handle himself well as Crocker blasts him with magic, but he reflects it with a magical mirror that he was gifted. At one point though, the two lock weapons and the mirror ends up shattered into pieces.
Now, my comedic little friend, I hope you enjoy life as a shrimp puff!
Excuse me. Hi, Mr. Crazy Face. Meet Mr. Fairy Fist! home and watched my favorite workout video, 5-second massive pecs.
With his new buff bod, Cosmo charges into battle and beats the ever-loving snot out of Mr. Crocker, rescuing Wanda in the process. However, when Cosmo starts talking to Wanda about his new buff body, Mr. Crocker sneaks from below, grabbing his staff back and trapping Cosmo in it as well.
Let those fairies go!
Back for more, eh? Okay. I'll show you what magic, along with proper planning and a little psychosis, can really do!
Mr. Crocker opens a massive wormhole in front of Timmy. It sucks him in, and we see him teleported to an asteroid belt where he immediately begins to suffocate from the lack of oxygen in the vacuum of space. On the bright side though, the Groucho Marx glasses that he got from the April Fool are able to magically transform into a space helmet, allowing him to breathe. On the not so bright though, Crocker is in hot pursuit, clawing his way through a wormhole right behind Timmy. Their battle commences further through the space-time continuum as Crocker ends up opening another wormhole and taking them both to ancient Egypt where the pyramids are being built, and from there, we see him take them down to a subatomic level, to the inside of Butch Hartman's eraser as he draws the show. As the battle continues between atoms that are beyond microscopic, Timmy ends up using knowledge that he got from Crocker himself in science class to form a plan. He uses Cupid's bow to launch an arrow, striking the atom that Mr. Crocker is standing on and splitting it in half, thus causing a massive nuclear explosion. In the blink of an eye, everything nearby is completely eradicated. As flora and fauna all turn to ash, the only thing left alive in the crater formed in the explosion is Mr. Crocker, who encased himself in a magical bubble to withstand the blast.
Seems his splitting the atom plan has backfired. There's no possible way he could have survived an atomic explosion!
Guess again, Crockpot. I'm just as powerful as you are.
Turner!
At the realization that Timmy is the mysterious force that he's been up against, Mr. Crocker decides to hit Timmy where it hurts, by going for his parents. Crocker opens up another wormhole and rushes through it, making his way to Timmy's house, where he takes his parents hostage.
Mom! Dad! Leave them alone!
You're done giving me orders, Turner! Now surrender, or I turn your parents into ice sculptures and transport them to the sun!
I surrender.
Mr. Crocker has Timmy put in chains, and for one final request, Timmy begs to have one last moment with his mom and dad. Crocker ends up granting Timmy's wish, and in his final moments, he apologizes to them, saying that all of this is his fault. He says that none of this would have happened if he hadn't gotten so mad at them for lying to him. At that, though, he realizes that he himself has been lying to them as well, deciding that now is his time to come clean.
You see those two creatures floating in Crocker's scepter? Their names are Cosmo and Wanda.
Timmy! No!
And they're my fairy godparents!
I knew it all along! I was right! You do have fairies that I have now!
Timmy's parents are shocked, learning that all this time he had magical fairy godparents. He goes on to explain that there are certain things that he can and can't do with them. There are rules in place that he has to follow. And that's when Timmy reveals that he just made the ultimate sacrifice. In revealing who Cosmo and Wanda are, they're now gonna have to go away forever. But on the bright side, at least they're gonna be ripped away from Crocker yet again. Just like that, a massive rulebook falls from the sky as we see Cosmo and Wanda being sucked away from Crocker, who's fighting to stop this from happening.
But we don't want to go away forever! We love you!
I love you too. And that's why I had to tell the truth, because the truth will set you free!
No! Stop! My fairies! No! Blast! My fairies! They're gone! You will pay for that!
Crocker attempts to smite Timmy, but without his fairies, he's completely powerless. Now that he doesn't have magic at his disposal, Timmy's parents attack him, just beating the absolute snot out of him. In the beatdown, the muffin gets knocked out of Crocker's costume, and it's returned to Timmy, who finally gets the opportunity to have his rule-free wish. He eats the entire muffin in one bite, and with the magic flowing through him, he wishes that Cosmo and Wanda were his fairy godparents again. Just like that, the two of them return, and he's able to wish that everything was back to normal, and that everyone forgot about learning his secret. In an epic burst of magic, we see everything finally reverted back to the way it once was, as the world returns to normal and the bridge between Fairy World and the Earth is restored. Timmy's house and his parents are back to normal, and Mr. Crocker is back to the same exact place that he has always been.
It's true! Fairies exist, and someday you will all bow down to me!
But today, it's time for you to bow down for your medicine.
Night-night, crazy guy.
Back at home, Timmy carefully takes the forget-me-knob off of his door, and as he's in the middle of disposing of it, Jorgen von Strangle shows up, telling him that rule-free wish or not, he still put the entire universe in jeopardy and exposed his secret, so he's taking Cosmo and Wanda away. Thankful for the convenient timing, however, Timmy throws the forget-me-knob at Jorgen, hitting him in the head pretty hard, causing him to even forget who they are and what he was doing there in the first place. To put it in fewer words, they trick Jorgen into thinking that this is his first time placing Cosmo and Wanda with Timmy. With Jorgen being taken care of, Timmy celebrates a job well done as we cut back over to Fairy World, where all of the fairies are flooding back to the Earth, thankful that the bridge has been restored and they can be reunited with their godchildren. As the magic flows down from the sky, we see it landing over none other than Mr. Crocker, who's been locked up in a mental facility.
Fairies! They're here! I can prove it!
Night-night, crazy guy!
Mummy.
Now, this episode is such a cool one to take in on the heels of the entire picture that we've painted of Mr. Crocker up to this point. With the understanding of what happened in his childhood, his history of chasing Timmy, how surprisingly personal of a pursuit that this is for him, and of course, knowing how the fairies are secretly collecting power from him in the background this entire time, it really makes you ponder the emotions surrounding this one. On one hand, we've all grown a distaste for Mr. Crocker due to his inherent evil nature. But when we consider what he's been through that's pushed him to this point and the forces working in the background, it really makes the perspective here truly one that can't be clear-cut. I mean, obviously, you can paint it as he's an evil person shaped by a fairy-fueled villain origin story, but to ignore the circumstances of what happened to him and the benefit that came of it to the fairies would be blatantly ignoring the elephant in the room. Sure, he's in the wrong in his pursuit for world domination. However, wanting to be believed and expose the truth after decades of being ridiculed is completely justifiable, especially when we keep in mind that he knows that he's correct. Furthermore, it's really interesting to note that in every world, Crocker is the way that he is. Even in a universe ruled by primates, Crocker is still fairy obsessed, still correct in his conspiracies, and still considered a laughingstock by every single person around him. It's especially wild when you consider that in a timeline where fairy godparents are only given to primates, Crocker wouldn't have likely ever had them, right? I mean, they even say at one point that the founding alphas signed the Declaration of Independence, and AJ makes a comment about how in this timeline that's historically accurate. By default, that right there comes with the implication that in Bippy's wish coming true, history was rewritten. How could Crocker have gotten his fairy obsession if he didn't have the event on March 15th, 1972? Again, this would point to the fairies making him crazy so that they can harvest his energy even in this timeline. It's one of those where if you really allow the conspiracy about this conspiracy theorist to take the wheel, it leads us down a darker and darker trail the more you follow it. As far as this episode is concerned though, it's really wild to take in that Mr. Crocker has been threatening this new world order for an obscene amount of time now, but in this one, we finally see that come to fruition. His dreams of world domination are an actuality after decades of him chasing them. And honestly, it may have been so much worse than we could have ever expected. One of the first big things to acknowledge is just how shocking and surprising it was to take in that moment where Mr. Crocker finally wins. The moment where he finally catches Wanda hits like a ton of bricks. This man has been on this conquest, put through the gauntlet time and time again in the pursuit of a fairy godparent. Honestly, as a viewer of this show, I thought that this moment right here would never happen. Like, having seen Transparents, the first episode that we checked out, live as it premiered, I would have never guessed that someday this man would end up in control of Timmy's fairies. Even bigger, though, was the moment where Mr. Crocker put Timmy in checkmate, having taken his parents. Seeing Timmy finally admitting defeat and surrendering was one of the most unexpected twists of all time. They truly made it such an emotional climax to such a long journey. Like, even outside of this episode, we've seen Mr. Crocker be a laughingstock for ages, having failed time and time again. But in this episode, he finally enslaves the Earth. It's one of those where the writers of the show recognized how huge of a moment that this is for Mr. Crocker, and in the face of having to step up to the plate and write an equally huge, gripping story, they knocked it out of the park in my opinion. They truly capitalized on the emotion of it all to make such a compelling and dramatic reveal when Timmy sacrificed everything and purposefully had Cosmo and Wanda taken away. One other thing they knocked out of the park in my opinion was the way that they wrote Mr. Crocker in this episode. Like so many villains in cartoons lead into the empty-headed and helpless nature. Like Plankton, for example. There have been multiple times where he would pursue world domination, or even simply just the Krabby Patty formula, only to not really know what to do once he gets close to it. Like, there's so much planning and thought put into it, but once it comes to stepping up to the plate, there's this kind of mindset of, geez, well, I didn't really think I'd get this far. Mr. Crocker, on the other hand, is the kind of villain who, when the moment presented itself, was able to recognize a time where he needed to strike while the iron was hot. This man knew exactly what he wanted and knew exactly what he needed to do in order to get it. In that regard, this episode really did show us a lot about Crocker as a character. This one capitalizes even further on the fact that he's nearly always precisely accurate in his conspiracies. He was so correct in this one that even when he got his hands on the muffin, he knew exactly what he needed to do in order to make it work. By all means, it's a muffin of course, it's not rocket science, but like, no other character knew it was magic when they bit into it. Well, other than Timmy, but he doesn't count. The point is, Crocker knew what he was doing, and he knew what his ultimate goal was. On that note, it's also admirable that the writers really stuck to his character. There wasn't really any out-of-character moments here or anything that felt unlike Crocker. I mean, even when he did get his hands on a fairy, instead of cherishing it to keep it around as long as possible, or maybe even trying to do anything to get the fairy on his side, or at least to see where he's coming from, he decides to just rule with an iron fist in a very Crocker-like fashion, torturing Wanda with every bit of magic that he takes from her, blatantly disregarding any pain that it might be bringing her. This one really served as a reminder that when it comes to Mr. Crocker, what you see is what you get. He doesn't have a hidden soft spot. He doesn't have any good intentions. He's nothing but a cold-hearted, power-hungry, fed-up schoolteacher who's been made bitter by not only his life being ruined by fairies, but also by society shunning him as a whole. All in all, we can say that this episode is not only a true representation of Denzel Crocker, but it's also a testament to how brutally self-aware that he is. I mean, at one point he makes a comment about having psychosis. On top of that, we've seen him seeking therapy, feeling fed up with his life-ruining obsession, as well as just in general displaying hatred for the hand that he's been dealt in life. He's kind of walking this fine line where on one side his obsession with fairies is something that he doesn't want to give up because it's almost like winning the lottery. If he keeps trying, there's a 1 in a million chance that maybe he'll win the jackpot and achieve his ultimate goal of enslaving everyone and showing them that fairies are real once and for all. On the other side of that line though, until he can actually prove that fairies exist and capture one, he completely acknowledges how much this obsession is dominating and ultimately ruining his life. He knows that what he's doing is basically nuking his social life on all levels, but he doesn't care, because to him, it's all worth it. It's all worth it because this isn't a gamble. This isn't the lottery. There is no maybe fairies are real. He knows without a shadow of a doubt that fairy godparents exist, and he knows that all he has to do is capture one and he could have endless power. Like, his situation kind of is a hard to swallow pill for us as viewers, all things considered. The story is heart-wrenching in some ways and blood-boiling in others. Most of all though, I'd say that his story is tragic. Aside from the fact that he once had a happy childhood thanks to Cosmo and Wanda that was ripped away from him without any fault of his own, aside from the fact that he's correct about everything and everyone still ridicules him, and aside from the fact that he's being manipulated and preyed upon by the fairies who wronged him, it's ultimately tragic because Mr. Crocker has no idea that the fairies that he's chased all of this time, captured, and tortured were the exact same fairies that once loved him, and he loved them in return. In hindsight, looking at every single thing that we've seen here and keeping in mind the relationship that Denzel Crocker had in his childhood with Cosmo and Wanda, a relationship that none of them even remember, it's just so heartbreaking, and it makes every aspect of his misery so much more awe-inspiring. But I have to ask, what do you guys think? Did these last couple of hours change the way that you look at Mr. Crocker? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, massive shout out to my friends in the true 90s kids tier. I absolutely can't thank you all enough for your support. And of course, everyone else on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Seriously, you guys are the absolute best, and I can't wait to show you all what I've been working on. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and stick around for another nostalgic walk down memory lane. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Peace.